Pregame.com.
Welcome back to pregame.tv. Friday, Sweet 16 action. We're going to take a look at Connecticut and Iowa State. This is going to be Ken's free pick. Ken, I'll start with you. Connecticut and Iowa State. This is a matchup that, Connecticut, maybe a lot of people didn't think that they were going to be here. They took care of business against the Villanova team. A Villanova team that had a gaudy record but had some flaws defensively whenever they faced a team that could chuck it up from three. And let me give some props to our co-host on First Preview, Scott Spreitzer. He's been singing that all year, that Villanova can't handle teams that can shoot it from downtown, and that's what did them in against Connecticut.
Yeah, and teams that play good defense down the stretch and teams that crash the boards. UConn plays as a unit. They've been doing that for a while, and it helps when you have that good guy, that point guard, Napier, that can not only control tempo, but also he can take the shots when he wants. You see the way that he sets up for a lot of those three-point jumpers. I mean, he waits, and as soon as he gets arm length between himself and the defender, up it goes. Percentage, yes, his percentage might be about 40%, but when he has arm's length, I bet you it's about 60%.
Brian, we talked yesterday, Iowa State in a dogfight, when we were having lunch, and, come down to the end of the game and, clock situation and stuff. And it's like, conspiracy theory. Go ahead and elaborate.
I was just sitting there and I go, there's no way that time didn't expire. And I said, and if they give them more time on the clock, obviously there's some sort of conspiracy because they didn't want them to advance. I mean, it was clear that they didn't call the timeout in time.
Yeah, you can't have both a Duke and a North Carolina out before the Sweet 16. When was the last time that happened? You're always going to get one of those teams in there.
What about Syracuse?
Syracuse.
Been bashing them all year. I'm glad it paid off.
I was on Syracuse, so I wasn't so happy.
You've been on Syracuse. Every time I say go against Syracuse, you've been on Syracuse.
I got a couple of them, but
he was due.
Ken. But you look at Connecticut and you look at Iowa State. Iowa State, they lost their big guy, before the last game. And you guys know, we talk about it in other sports. And, and I talked on your show Monday, Ken, the injured player theory. The team Iowa State lose their big guy. First game, they sucked it up. Played a great game. Everybody else rises to the occasion, plays 110%. They get that win. Can they match that intensity in Game 2 now without him?
Game 3.
Well, the last game was the first game.
Well, yeah.
He got hurt
early in the first game.
In the first game, but still, there was the first game.
I think they can. Once you get to this point, I mean, you're talking again, most of the kids that are playing, 19 to 23, that's where you're falling. Adrenaline, realizing you're in the Sweet 16, for the love of God. You're happy you're there, but you're not just happy you're there. You realize you're 2 games away from being in the Final Four. And Iowa State, Fred Hoiberg, he's a guy that gives them the green light. Now, again, Yang is not just your typical big guy. He's a guy that has great touch from the outside, steps back, knocks down the 3, shoots it at a high percentage. One of their leading scorers. I think DeAndre Kane, that's the way this team goes. Not Melvin Ejim, even though Ejim's their leading scorer. Kane is right there, but he's an assist guy, better than 6 a game. But he's also a selfish player at times, too. He wants that ball. He wanted it at the end of the Carolina game, and he's going to take it. And he'll either shoot you in the game, and you're going to dominate, or he may take you out of the game. And now as you move on, we'll see how good he is. I know he's been solid, and he's carried him this far, with the combination of the 3 of the guys, and 4 if you throw Hogan there. But it's going to be interesting. It's a definite contrast in styles because UConn is a chameleon-type team. They can up-tempo if need be, but they can also slow it down and play good, solid defense and have Napier control the game.
Now, Connecticut, obviously a big name as far as past history and tradition, in the big dance and all the success they had all those years under Coach Calhoun. Different team now, different conference now. They did play well down the stretch. They went 11-3 their last 14 games. The 2 of the 3 losses came to Louisville, and Louisville just smacked them, all year, both games during the regular season and in the conference tournament. But here's the situation. This conference, the teams that, left the Big East and left them as the Big Least, as everybody likes to make fun of the Big East right now. How do you guys, do you think this conference was weak, soft, mediocre? Where do you put it at, the AAC?
I really don't think the conference is that great. There was a lot of weird things that happened in the conference. SMU swept Connecticut. Memphis swept Louisville. So there was really no constant there. There were 5 quality teams. Yes, everybody says SMU got jobbed. UConn, pretty good. Memphis, pretty good. Louisville, still the best team out of there and athletically and with the experience from winning the national title last year. So, again, it's up there. It'll really decline. I mean, next year when Louisville bolts to the ACC, it's in a lot of trouble. But, it's an okay conference. It's around, 6th, 7th, 8th, right around there.
Some interesting stats for this game we're talking about here. We've got an Iowa State team out of the 16 teams still in it. They like to play the fastest pace out of anybody else in it. And they do have good, I like them because they got good ball movement. They got that, like the highest assist rate per basket out of all the teams in the Sweet 16. Taking a look, as I said in the last video, about straight up winners against top 50 opponents, Iowa State 12-6, Connecticut 9-7. But interesting to note that Connecticut's the best foul shooting team remaining, and they're by a pretty good margin. They're a very good foul shooting team. So when we get into this part of these games where a lot of tight contested games as opposed to the earlier rounds where most of the time you see, like some mismatches, foul shooting could come into play here, and I think Connecticut's got a big advantage here.
Well, you know what, Ken? This is your free pick. Let's make it official.
There you go. And, of course, all those years, UConn in the Big East, very familiar with Madison Square Garden. Now, didn't have that Big East schedule, didn't have to play St. John's, so they still went there, though. They played Indiana there in the Coaches versus Cancer 59-58 win. Do I think the game is going to be that low scoring? No, but I still like the under in this game. Here's why. Total that I got, and I played it at 147.5. It's down to 146.5 pretty much everywhere. I expect it to go down a little bit further. Yes, Iowa State's a very high-scoring team. But again, most of those stats are with George Yang in the lineup. They're still solid. Kane, Edgem, Hogue. You've got Naslong who can dial up the three, no problem. Morris and Thomas, they're stepping in a role now trying to relieve the pressure without Yang there. But let's remember who's going to control the ball. The point guard. Who's the best point guard out there? It's going to be Shabazz Napier. Can the guy knock down free throws? No problem. Can he control tempo? No problem. He's also nursing a bad shin. Remember, he came out of that game against Nova. He didn't want to come out. He had to come out. He was nearly crying on the sidelines there. He got back in. He sucked it up. He'll be ready. But again, let's remember, the winner of this game's got to turn around, play the winner of Michigan State, Virginia 2 days later. Will Napier be ready if he goes full force and risks injury? They can't do that. Kevin Ollie will be careful there, and they'll take their time. They'll work it around. I expect this game to be in the 130s at the highest, maybe around 136, 137. I think this game goes under by about 10 points. When you look at Iowa State, remember the championship game in the Big 12. As high-scoring as all their games are, that game only got to 135 against Baylor, another high-scoring team. Why? Because the intensity of a big game. So a lot of times we're like over. All of a sudden it's a big game. You're going to value those possessions a little bit more. And like Brian said, he thinks it's going to be a closely contested game, which I agree with, which means you really take care of the ball and you're going to use 25 to 30 seconds to get a good shot, to make sure you just don't come down and chuck one up. My only fear in this game as far as the total is if somebody gets out to a double-digit lead and that team, Iowa State, if they get out to a double-digit lead on UConn, UConn's got to come out of their shell and they've got to up-tempo it, and then I'll get killed. But I'm going to take a chance, a good chance, I think, that Napier controls tempo, that this game is nip and tuck through the first half, a 3, 4, 5-point game by halftime, and then pretty close down the stretch as well. As long as I don't have overtime, I feel I'm comfortable that this game will go under 136. The total, again, right now 146.5. I played it at 147.5, and again, I expect it to go down. That's just me. If you look at UConn's last 16 games, they've all gone under the total, 139 or lower. The two games that didn't both went overtime, and it was the overtime sessions that put those games over. Iowa State, on the other hand, most of their games go over the total, but again, I'm looking at that game against Baylor in the championship of the Big 12. I might have said SEC before, but I meant the Big 12 title game against Baylor. That game, again, hitting 135. So I expect this game being right around there, somewhere in the neighborhood of 70 to 67, somewhere in that neighborhood.
All right, good stuff from Ken as always. We're going to come back next. We're going to be looking at a couple season win totals. Major League Baseball from Bryan Leonard. He didn't pick a Sweet 16 game, so we told him, you're going overtime, buddy. You got to pick 2 season totals for our viewers since you didn't do a Sweet 16.
Oh, there's a lot of guys that didn't do Sweet 16 games this week.
The Tuesday cruise coming next week with like 6 each or so.
I'm pleading the 5th, guys. I'm pleading the 5th. All right, we're going to be back.
Dodgers already clinched it, 2-0.
There you go. We'll be back right back. Pregame.tv.